So here on the homestead, we live by the idea of waste not, want not. And we have quite a few different grades of meat. We have human grade and pet grade. Because we're not just feeding ourselves, we're feeding our dogs and our cats as well. So most of the time, our rabbits can be used as meat, even if they're injured or sick. So for instance, if a rabbit has a broken leg or a broken back, we as humans can definitely eat it. When we cull out an animal, we don't use any chemical processing. We use cervical dislocation via the broomstick method. And an injured animal can definitely be harvested. When it comes to sicknesses, it's a little bit different. If it's something minor, like a minor infection of coccidiosis, it's not a big deal, you just can't eat the liver. But if we're worried too much about an animal being sick, most of the time we can feed it as pet grade food. You just gotta be careful with your organs, which can easily be composted. When it comes to defective rabbits, such as birth defects, normally we will cull the animal within the first couple days of its life. After the animal is culled, we'll give it to our dogs as a treat. The only time I really worry about pet grade food is if the animal has been found dead and is already in rigor mortis. Meaning I don't know how long the animal has sat there and if the meat is spoiled. In those instances, I will compost the animal, because at least then we can still get some nutrients from that animal and put it back into our gardens. The idea on the homestead is to be as sustainable as possible and to not waste anything if we can help it. But in doing so, we try to be as safe and hygienic as possible. But remember, there is a difference between human and pet grade. So when it's hot outside, one of the tricks I use to get moms to nurse in the middle of the day is I will take a handful of oats, which they would normally be getting with their normal feeding, and I will put it to where they need to eat it in the nest box. This helps babies to get an extra nursing in the middle of the day when it's extremely hot and they might need extra fluids. The oats also help moms with condition and milk production. So I saw this comment on a friend's post and it gets me a giggling, mostly for the "we just do it for money" thing. Do you know how much money I make off of these bad guys? If I'm lucky, I make enough to cover their feed costs. If I'm lucky. I'm better off during the fair year and the 4-H year because I have more FFA and 4-Hers buying from me for meat pens. But most of the time, I'm not getting any kind of profit off these guys, or if I do make a profit, it's enough for a Starbucks coffee. I don't raise rabbits for the money. I raise the rabbits to eat them, and to improve my breeds and to show them. My last show cost me a lot of money, and that was all out of pocket, and nothing covered that other than, the money I make elsewhere. But go off. So for me, what makes a good Rex versus just a meat Rex, right? Does it meet the standard of perfection set out by the ARBA? Is it an appropriate weight? Do the babies they have grow out quickly? Meaning around 14 to 16 weeks normally. So for instance, this is my 3-month-old doe, Emma. She is a Rex, and this was her 5-pound evaluation. And then this is her sister, Lizzie, who is also getting her 5-pound evaluation again at 3 months. Both of them have great grow out rates, and I am very pleased with their type and how they are to the SOP. In fact, I'll be showing both of these next month at show as juniors. Now compare it to this chinchilla buck I have, who this is also his 5-pound evaluation, and he was about 5.5 months here. Both lines were decent lines. The difference was rate of grow out. Those does grew about a month faster than that buck, and that's an improvement that we are working towards in our rabbitry. And I'd also like to think that our type is improving as well as we continue to improve our breed. Because again, a good rabbit, be it Rex or any rabbit, relies on the standard of perfection and improving that over time. So I did this with one of my Californians, and I've had requests to do it with my Rex. So I'm going to kind of go over what I'm looking for when it comes to a Rex rabbit for my breeding program and a take to show. This is Emma. Emma is about 3.5 months old, and she is one of our breeding prospects coming up for the fall. She is still a baby, so her posing is not the best, and she's still a little shy, but when we pose her up, and she actually gets posed up, what I'm looking for in a Rex is a commercial body type. So I want them to have a bit of a shoulder and a nice high point, and she is not cooperating. There we go. Now we got her behaving. So when I'm looking at a Rex rabbit, what I am looking for is a commercial body type. I want a nice shoulder that is not too long or too short, with a nice rounded top end that comes to a high point on the hips. I want to make sure that they look almost ball-like coming through here, having no dips on the hindquarters, and that they aren't pinched in the back here. What I'm also looking for when it comes to fur quality is I'm looking for the classic Rex hair type. Right now she's molting out her baby coat a little bit, so we are having a little bit of blowout and shed, but I want to have a nice bounce back when it comes to the fur. I'm also looking at balance between the head and the body. For instance, Emma's ears are a little long for my liking. Not horribly so, but they're a little off balance. I would like to see a shorter ear on her, but she might grow into her ears yet. I have no idea. But I am liking her depth. She has a very nice depth on the hind end that is equal to her high point, so she has a nice thickness. And even though her shoulders are a bit long, they are very well filled out, and she has a nice balanced look to her. I do want to see a little more of her up here on this top or high point, or top line rather. Her top line's a little thin going through here, and it gives almost a dipped appearance as we're coming back to the hips. As she gets older, I want to see her fill out more. But other than that, she, for a baby, is doing amazing, and she is just a gorgeous girl. I love her color. It is just outstanding. She is an otter, black otter to be exact, and I am really excited to get her to show next month. So something that's an absolute lifesaver, especially if you're in a more enclosed barn, is stall refresher. You can get a big bag of it for like $10, and it's really great for in those corners that have trouble staying dry, especially if you have bucks that like to pee on the wall and it runs down. So what I do weekly is I do a deep clean of the barn. So I'll clean out the pans every day or every other day or so, but to get into the corners and take the cages out and sweep around, I do that about once a week. So once I get that all swept out and I spray it down and it dries naturally, I will set down a layer of stall refresher to help catch that wet so it doesn't sink as deep into the wood, and it helps contain the smell for later in the week. So you keep your ammonia levels down and you keep it more dry. You can also use cat litter. That's another option. I just prefer the stall refresh. So this is Freak, and we talked about him in a previous video, saying how he had a very short shoulder and he was almost compact and tight. Now compare that to George here. Now, if you look at George, he has a much longer portion from his shoulders up to his head, giving him a much longer looking shoulder. And once again, comparing to Freak to kind of give you that idea. Now compare both of them to my doe, Hawk. Hawk has a much nicer type, and she is kind of middle range for both of these. Her shoulder's neither too long or too short, and in fact, I absolutely love this doe and her conformation. The only thing I will say is I think she's a little too chopped on the ass. I'd like her to be filled out just a bit more coming down on the rear end and filling out just a tiny bit more before she comes down on her straight. So again, Hawk being a really nice shoulder, Freak being too short, George being too long. Ricky, you do it? You do it? Can we do it anyway? Ricky, you want to be a velociraptor? Yeah, you want to be a velociraptor? Yeah. Come here, Rick. Come here, Mr. Velociraptor. Move it. Good boy. Rick, I feel like that wasn't angry enough. Can you do it angrier? Are you a naughty boy? This is a naughty boy. Oh, I don't want that, but thank you. No, I don't want that. Thanks, Rick. Can I grab it? You want it held? There you go. I don't want it. I don't... Okay, I'll take it. You want it back? Oh, thank you. You want it back? No? Okay. Yeah, you want to come here? Come here. Good boy. Is you an angry velociraptor? This is so angry. Yeah. Naughty boy. So I currently only have one Californian kit that is close to that age, and he is 6 weeks old. And this is about how much he weighs. When he's not moving around, he's about 3 3/4 pounds. And this is what he looks like. This is actually Freak and Hawk's Singleton. He's not too bad looking for about 6 weeks, but he is kind of small. But he's about half the age of yours, so if you're looking at a size comparison, that might give you an idea of whether yours still look like babies or not. But he's a really sweet boy. He's gonna go be a buck at a breeding program once he's grown. So it's been a while since I've talked about trimming rabbits' nails, so I figured I can give a little how-to and just explain how I do it. So this is Lulu. She is a 10-week-old mini rat. Although I have worked with handling her and flipping her over, this will be her first nail trimming. So you can kind of see how I work through working with a doe who has never had a nail trimming before and has only been handled a few times in the first couple of months of life. So when working with very young animals, the first thing I do is just make sure that they are in a calm state and that it's not a stressful experience for them, because we want them, especially when they're show rabbits, to be used to being handled and flipped around so that they have good behavior on the show table. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip her over. I'm not going to grab her ears, but I am going to support the back of her neck when I do this. And I'm going to do a quick flip supporting the butt, like so. And if she wiggles, I'm just going to give her a little blow on the forehead. And that's just kind of calming her down and kind of just whooshes. Now, a lot of people talk about trancing. Trancing's a myth. If she wants to get out when I'm holding her like that, she can. Because although I am supporting the back of her head with my hands, I am not holding her there. So she could easily roll out of this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at her nails and see which ones need to be trimmed. What you want to avoid is that pink part right there. That's called the quick. And if you hit it with the nail clippers, it's going to bleed excessively. So you want to cut it down far enough to where the nails are not long, but not so short that it causes bleeding or pain. So these are my preferred clippers. They're a more expensive clipper, but you can get really cheap ones for about $2 in the pet section at Walmart. All right, I'm gonna get her flipped over again. Just like so. And now I'm going to go ahead and start clipping her nails. And again, we want this to be a easy experience for her because of how young she is and how little she has been handled. And this is her first nail trimming at her age. So we don't want to cut the nails too short. We just want to go through and just do a quick little clipping. Sometimes the babies do flinch when you are first working with them when you're clipping it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've hit the quick, just that they're not used to the feeling and the sound. Done, I take some time, especially with the babies, to just kind of love on them so they equate it with attention and good experiences. Trimming an adult only takes me about a minute per rabbit, but trimming a baby can take me around 3 to 5 minutes if I'm taking my time. So this is Bravo. He is 12 weeks old, and he is another young kit that I have to trim his nails today. And if you look, he has dark nails. There still is a color difference when it comes to the quick, but it's a little harder to tell, and I'm just a little more careful. So in reference to this comment, if you don't know, I raise meat rabbits. And we were talking about line breeding and the fact that you would need to heavily cull your lines. In some instances, when we talk about culling, we do talk about butchering out our animals, but in other instances, we don't. Culling simply means to remove from a breeding program. If we're talking about soft culling, that means keeping the animal alive. So if you would send it to another breeding program, another farm, or sell it as a pet. For instance, my daughter's pet Gigi will eventually be a soft cull. I'm not doing anything to him. He's a perma pet, but I won't use him in my breeding program forever. I've only had 2 test breedings with him, and I've had mixed reviews of what I like, so I'll try one more time. When we talk about killing and butchering out an animal, we talk about hard culling. So 90% of my rabbits are hard culls because we eat them. So they are permanently being removed from our breeding program or anybody else's breeding program. And it's extremely important in a program to heavily cull your animals and remove them from your breeding program when you are line breeding. But when you hear a breeder talking about culling, you might have to ask them to verify what kind they mean and ask them why. Because a lot of times they have some really great points that are really educational for people who are trying to get into breeding meat rabbits or show rabbits. I myself am very upfront in my process. And if I'm not keeping a rabbit, I am very blunt as to why. So questions are always encouraged. So I have a bunch of people asking to see some of Rick's tricks, and there is one trick that Rick knows super well and does no matter what. Hey Rick! Rick, can I get a little wave? Or the best wave? One more little wave? Or the best wave? Good boy. That was a good boy.